Hey friends, welcome back to this channel. I'm here with KharmaMedic. Do you want to introduce yourself?
So hi, my name is Nasser. I'm now a fourth year medical student studying at King's College London. And recently over this summer, I took the USMLE Step 1 because I'm dabbling with the idea of moving to the US in the future.
Nice. So you've just taken the USMLE Step 1.
Yes.
I've just started preparing for the USMLE Step 1 and I want you to tell me what I should do.
Well, very nice specific question.
Okay, I'll ask you some specific questions. So
Sure.
Number one, what are your thoughts on Anki?
My thoughts on Anki are that if you are an Anki person, use Anki. But like me, who was not an Anki person, I sort of felt this pressure from everyone else who is studying for the USMLE or who makes videos about studying for the USMLE to use Anki. And I tried to use it for a month or two. I did put in the effort, but I found that it just didn't work for me. And so I abandoned it as soon as I realized that. I personally find that with Anki, there wasn't enough context surrounding the question and answer for me to learn. I would memorize the sentence. I would memorize what the answer was going to be based off of the first couple of words. And that's obviously not going to be helpful when you need to apply your knowledge.
Yeah, I'm finding this with Anki as well. Like I'd go through like 2 hours of flashcards and at the end I'd have like, I'd know the flashcards, but if you'd asked me to explain the disease, I wouldn't know what's actually going on.
Yeah, exactly. And with the USMLE, I feel like with Step 1, you can be asked literally any fact in that first aid book. Like almost anything is fair game. And so knowing a bunch of small facts scattered randomly isn't as helpful as like actually understanding the disease, because I feel like then you'll be able to answer whatever question gets thrown at you, not just what you've seen before.
Okay, so here's the method that I'm tentatively going for, which is number 1, going through Pathoma. And while I'm going through it, I'm kind of creating Notion toggles for writing questions for myself and kind of screenshotting stuff from the PDF or from like writing my notes or screenshotting from the videos to kind of extend them. And the idea is that over time, I'll cover all of the Pathoma content. So I'll know all of Path and I'll stick it into my retrospective revision timetable. So I've done some spaced repetition and active recall of those concepts.
Okay.
And then once I've done a pass through that, I was going to do a pass through Sketchy Micro and I've heard, Farm. And I've heard Boards and Beyond Biochem is quite good.
Okay.
And then I was just going to bang out questions.
Okay.
How do you think this is reasonable as a strat?
So, Pathoma, definitely. Should know inside out. Chapters 1 to 3 are extremely high yield.
Really? Like the basic neoplasia, basics of cells and regeneration and stuff?
Yes. Inflammation, neoplasia, and I forget what the third one is.
Okay.
But basically, the examiners know that these 3 chapters underlie all other pathology and processes for the exam. And so they love to go after them. I read it the night before my exam, and there were literally, I think, like 10 to 15 questions that came up just from those 3 chapters. So Pathoma 1 to 3 is a must. Then you mentioned going through Sketchy, Micro, and Farm. For me, they are non-negotiable. Like you need to do them. I wouldn't know anything about Micro. I wouldn't remember half the Farm things that I did without Sketchy. So I found it a very useful resource.
And so, for example, when you see something, do you actually see the image in your mind?
Yes, exactly. So even now in med school, I'll get a question about whooping cough, Bordetella pertussis or whatever. And I'll remember that the treatment for it is a macrolide because there was like a little crow sitting on the windowsill in that picture. I could never remember something like that from text, like ever. So for me, it's been very, very helpful.
So Sketchy Micro, Sketchy Farm.
Sketchy Micro, Sketchy Farm. And then you talked about Boards and Beyond Biochemistry.
Biochem.
Biochemistry, yeah. So Boards and Beyond Biochemistry, I found as useful as the other Boards and Beyond's videos. I didn't find it like particularly helpful. There is an online resource that I discovered very late called Pixorize.
Oh, I've heard of this,
Okay, so
it's like
apparently
Sketchy,
it's like Sketchy, but they do Biochem and a bunch of other things, but I used some of them for Biochem. And I found that very helpful. So yeah, biochemistry with Pixorize.
What sort of content is tested in Biochem? Is it like Krebs cycle, what's the 4th enzyme in the TCA cycle type situation?
Not quite. It's more about like the rate determining steps of the different cycles. But you do need to know what the starting products are, the end products. It's not so much about know exactly what the structures are and what every single enzyme is. It does focus on the most important ones, but you do need to know a stupid amount. Also, there's a YouTube channel called Dirty USMLE. This guy is amazing. You've heard of it. So it's this guy who's now a doctor in the US, and he makes videos on how to memorize really difficult to memorize content for the Step 1 using absurd like acronyms and mnemonics. And I found those very, very helpful as well.
Nice. Dirty USMLE.
Dirty USMLE, yeah.
Sick.
Or Dirty Med. Dirty Medicine, yeah. He changed branding.
Dirty Medicine.
But yeah.
So is that kind of aimed at biochem, or is this like all sorts of different topics?
No. So that is, for example, if you're reading first aid and you come across the neurocutaneous disorders table, which is like a ridiculous table with so many different facts, or lysosomal storage diseases, glycogen storage diseases, which you would never even need to know about in the UK med school, Those tables, he will turn into, here's exactly what you need to know, the most high yield facts, and here's a great mnemonic to memorize it.
Okay.
So I found that very helpful. In fact, I had a whole document of just dirty USMLE notes.
Damn.
It was like a proper resource for me, going through his things. And he does Biochem too.
Okay, so at what point did you start doing questions?
Questions I started doing from the very beginning, but I was using USMLE RX, which is known to be a sort of easier version of UWorld.
Okay.
So I didn't do enough questions early enough.
Oh, interesting. Because I right now I think I'm thinking learn the stuff and then do the questions, but maybe I should integrate more.
Yeah, so that's the strategy I had. I told myself I need to read through first aid and pathoma once quickly, just to know what's out there. Sort of like you say, scope the subject, and then read it once in detail, and then do questions. But I really think that was the wrong move. And I'll tell you why. Because UWorld question bank and the UWorld practice test are very similar to the actual thing. Okay. So the earlier you do those questions, the quicker you find out what they like to focus on. Okay. And they do like to focus on certain things. Yes, you can be tested on everything in first aid, but tuberculosis comes up all the time. I don't remember what else, but there are certain topics that come up frequently. And like question banks is the best way to learn that information. And it's made by the same company that does the actual test.
UWorld is made by the same company that does the actual USMLE.
I'm pretty sure.
Really?
Yes.
Damn. Okay.
The NBME, or was that NBME?
NBME have their own practice test.
NBME have their own practice test.
Yeah, I feel like that's the official one, isn't it?
Okay, wait. One or the other.
Yeah,
but anyway, NBMEs are also very useful.
Okay.
My actual test was a mixture between NBME style questions and UWorld style questions.
Okay. But you started with USMLE RX.
I started with RX.
So would you recommend I start with that? Because I tried some amboss questions and I got like 2% of them right. And I was like, what? There are bacteria and viruses here I've never even heard of.
Yeah, exactly. I know. When you first start, you feel like you know nothing. And it takes a while to get that percentage up.
Presumably you wouldn't just start doing questions on everything because at that point, like there's no way you're going to know any of it, right? Do you start with a certain subject? Or?
Okay. So I started doing it system by system. I would read the cardiology in first aid, read cardiology in pathoma, and then do cardiology questions. And my score was just bad.
Really?
Even at that point, my score was just bad. The only time my score improved was when I started doing random questions. So all of the systems, one after another, and timed. Because when I was doing it without that time pressure, I would like really overthink each question, spend too long on each question, and then spend a lot of time reading the answer directly after. I didn't like get in the zone of answering one question after another. As soon as I started doing that, I saw my scores improve.
But then how do you learn from the questions if you're not kind of going looking at the answer in depth, trying to figure out why you got it wrong and what the wrong answers were and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so that's what I was doing at the beginning. And I found that it was taking me so long that I wasn't getting through enough questions. And I think the number one thing to remember here is that questions are number one. Yes, you should know pathoma and first aid, but I think in retrospect, even if you don't know those two very well,
if you do like 10,000
do
questions.
the questions, yes.
So how many questions did you do by the end of it?
So I did 2/3 of the UWorld question bank. And my biggest regret is that I didn't finish the UWorld question bank. Because
so how many questions was that in total?
There's 3,000 total, so I did 2,000.
And that was the extent of the questions that you did?
Yes, 2,000 plus USMLE RX. I want to say I did a couple hundred there. I did not reach 1,000.
Because there are some videos on YouTube from guys who've done like 10,000, 14,000 questions.
I know. And those people redo the UWorld question banks. And if you have time for that, so that's why I would spend longer studying than I did. Because
so
A, I didn't finish the question bank. B, you can do it twice. And you can do the ones that you got wrong. That's extremely, extremely valuable and something that I wish I had done for sure. So I think above all, do the questions. And especially if you're studying over a long period of time, couple questions every day, couple questions every week, whatever it is, but keep up with the questions.
And I guess these all have apps on them. So while I'm being a waste man on the sofa, I could just bang some questions out. Is that how it works?
Because I was in lockdown and I was stuck at my desk the whole time, I didn't check. I didn't check if there are any apps. But USMLE RX has an app. UWorld, I don't know.
Like they charge like large amounts of money. They probably should.
Yeah, they do. That's another thing. Like all these resources are quite expensive.
So let's say I'm starting questions from tomorrow. What would you suggest I start with, and should I start random or should I start systems?
So even though it kind of seems unintuitive, I would start random. And I would start timed. The reason I would start timed is that it's a pretty fast-paced exam. And the sooner you get yourself into sort of the routine of answering questions quickly and digesting the information quickly, the better off you'll be.
And by time, do you mean kind of doing multiple questions and then worrying about the answers, or doing one at a time and looking at the answers as you go along?
So doing them in 40 question blocks.
Really?
Yeah.
And not looking at the answers until the end?
Until the end.
Oh, interesting.
So when I started, I felt exactly like that, and I did not want to do this.
Because I'm going to get like 2 questions right out of this 40, which is less than chance.
I know. But I really think that would have been the best way if I was doing this again, especially with the random.
And do you not find, would you not find that in that case, you would have like a bit of knowledge from here, a bit of knowledge from there, and not see the big picture?
So with this strategy, it's important that you actually spend time going through the answers after.
So it's not like
it's
a half-assed
incredibly
thing.
important.
You have to take absolutely ages for each question to be like, right, is this the answer? And...
Yes. So I would use UWorld as a studying resource.
Okay.
I wouldn't have used it as a testing platform, if that makes sense. Similar to how you would use First Aid or Pathoma or whatever.
Interesting. And so I guess through doing that, I will identify that, wow, I really know absolutely nothing about glycogen storage disorders. And then I will think, okay, this is coming up often enough. At this point, even though I haven't officially gotten to it in Pathoma, let me just find a video that lets me memorize it.
Exactly. I think that's what you'll realize the most is like, oh, this comes up quite often.
Okay.
Hence, I should just know this.
So it's a more like a quick and dirty way of like learning the stuff rather than kind of one chapter at a time.
So because this test is so huge, right? Like you just don't have time to actually learn all of this well properly in detail.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, like get the marks, right? You're trying to score as highly as possible. And so yeah, for me, I think the best way to do that is kind of to reverse engineer it. Start with the questions and work backwards.
Interesting.
But you need to do your reading.
Okay.
It's a lot, but like the reading has to get done as well.
Okay, so what's your process when you get a question wrong and you don't know why you got it wrong and you're looking at the explanations? What are you doing at that point?
So at that point, most of my knowledge is going to come from the explanation.
Okay.
But I would always search, does Dirty USMLE, the Dirty Medicine, have a video on this topic?
Okay.
If he has a video on this topic, then I'll watch it once, take notes on it, and I will know it decently well, much better than I would have if I was just trying to learn from the explanations.
Okay.
But questions generally, for me, I know it's not the best way, but I would separate them from my readings and my boards and beyond. So
what do you mean?
So I would never do a question and then go look up the relevant topic in the textbook and read that.
Yep.
I would just sort of do questions as a separate
As its own thing.
Yeah.
Got it. And so over time, you're filling the holes in your knowledge through these different sources that are somewhat non-overlapping.
Yes. I would like keep them. I mean, like I would read cardiology in First Aid, then cardiology in Pathoma.
Okay.
But then I would, the questions I was just doing every single day, no matter what else was going on.
Okay.
Just random questions just to get the numbers in more than anything, yeah.
And so how many questions are we doing a day? So how many recommended questions do you suggest that I do a day?
So I was quite slow going through the questions because I used it as a studying resource.
Okay. Yeah, I want to take my time going through
You want to take your time as well.
Yeah,
so I had friends who were using it just like flying through the questions, not really reading the explanations, just to get in the numbers and get exposure.
Okay.
But personally, I was doing, towards the end, I was doing 2 blocks in the morning. So a block takes you 1 hour.
Okay.
40 questions takes 1 hour.
To do the questions?
To do the questions.
Okay.
So I would do 2 blocks back to back and then review them. Okay. And that would take
the whole
like 3 hours, 4 hours. Yeah, it takes time.
To do the questions or to review them?
To review.
Okay. So 2 hours to do the 2 blocks and then about 4 hours to review.
Yeah.
So on average, about 3 hours in total for each block.
For me, yeah. But that was this is considered quite slow.
Okay.
But I like to take my time with them. How much I would recommend to you to do, honestly, the trick is you want to keep up with your readings and actually getting through all of the content. Yeah. And the more questions you do, the more it takes away from that. So it's about finding a balance that like you feel comfortable with. Okay. But that's what I was trying to do. And sorry, this 2 blocks I was doing towards the end. Okay. Towards the end, I was doing full days of just questions. Okay. But from the very beginning, I was doing 1 block a day. Okay. So just 1. And
so when you get a question wrong, you read it up. Do you take notes while reading it? What was your system for that?
Yeah. So I had a page on Notability that was called Important Stuff, and I had one that was called Must Do Before Exam. So Must Do Before Exam was anything that I needed to do but I couldn't deal with right now. I would just write a list and then eventually go through that. Important Stuff was when I would read a question and I would write down sort of the sentence that would help me get that question again if I had gotten it wrong. Okay. And so I would just have like 1 line per question. Okay. Sort of thing of like how I would get it right next time.
For example, this thing is a flavivirus.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with the virus, it's sketchy. Okay. So don't even bother reading First Aid viruses, except for the theory part at the beginning. Sure. But when it gets to the actual organisms, just sketchy. Okay. Same with Pharm. I did go through the First Aid Pharm sections at the back of each chapter. Yeah. But I think if I just did sketchy, I would have been the same. Okay. I would have been just fine.
Nice. So. Questions. So it sounds like what I need to change up about my thing now is kind of integrating questions a bit more with reading. Because at the moment I'm kind of doing Pathoma and thinking I'll do all of Pathoma. Yeah. But actually I should do maybe like some questions.
I would recommend doing questions, as early as you can.
Okay. Fine. Any other pro tips?
Any other pro tips?
I mean, apart from watching a video about this, which I'll watch as well.
Yeah. I think like one of the like hidden things that not a lot of people know about is dirty medicine. Just judging by how many views his videos get on YouTube, I don't think enough people watch them. The second thing is that, but this is more like late game, you can make a cheat sheet. So the first 10 to 15 minutes of your break time is a tutorial at the very beginning of the exam.
Okay.
So while that tutorial is going on, you can write down a cheat sheet. You get like pieces of paper.
Yep.
So I had prepared in my head what I wanted to write down on this cheat sheet.
Okay.
And I had, for example, written down every single virus in like a tree form. So I knew exactly where they were.
Yeah.
I had written down like the sexual development flowchart.
Yeah.
Anything that I was kind of struggling with.
Yeah.
So you can have that to reference as you go through the questions.
Oh, you can take that into the exam with you.
So the paper is on the desk when you sit down.
Okay.
As soon as the tutorial starts, you can write things down.
Creating your thingy from, okay.
I'm just throwing down a bunch of things I've memorized onto a piece of paper.
This is how I do essay exams. Like I had all the essay plans memorized, and at the start of the exam, I would bash out the plan.
Everything down.
And I'd be like, okay, now I can think about crafting this essay.
Exactly, yeah. And like biostats, like you'll want to write down all the equations, because trying to think of that equation, write it down, and then input the numbers is a waste of time.
Okay, nice. So that's kind of test day strategies.
Yeah.
I always get annoyed when people ask me this, but how many hours did you study? / what do you recommend in terms of like time input for this? I've got the next 12 months to prepare for this exam.
Okay. So for the first exactly 2 months, exactly 3 months, I studied 8 hours a day.
Bloody hell, that's a long time.
That's a long time. And then I realized that that wasn't enough, and so I started studying 10 hours a day.
Okay.
Every single day. And it sucked.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. This is because I was going from absolutely knowing nothing about the step 1 exam to test day in 6 months.
Okay.
I genuinely think that's a very short period of time.
Okay.
Like very, very. I would never do it again.
But you're saying, so I've got 12 months, so I'd need to go more than 4 hours a day every day for the next 12 months.
In one of my videos, I talk about how many hours each one of the resources is.
Okay.
Okay. Or there's this website called cramfighter.com.
Okay.
Okay. It's like a timetabling app thing.
Right.
And it tells you how many hours it takes to go through each resource.
Okay.
So if you just add up the number of hours, okay, not like note-taking time, not like studying that resource time, like that's probably months.
Damn.
Okay. The resources that I used.
Okay.
You don't have to use any resources, but you know. So because there's so much content, you just need so much time.
Yep.
That's what I found.
Okay.
I'm sure there are people who did it with much less time, much less effort, whatever.
Okay.
But that's how long it took for me.
Interesting. But now you can absolutely smash all your medical exams.
I definitely have an easier time with my medical exams now. Yeah. There's a lot of information that I simply would have never known if I didn't do it. Like now when I'm going through PassMed, I recognize quite a few things that I studied from the step 1 exam, which I simply would not have come across in medical school. So it definitely helps with that,
Okay.
For sure.
Nice. That sounds pretty good. Cool. Any other pro tips?
Any other pro tips? I have a video on this you should check out on my channel.
Link in the video description.
Specific pro tips. I don't have anything that isn't already out there. Like everything that I used, I got from watching other people's videos, talking to people who took the exam. But what I told you today is like what I would have done differently.
Okay, so more questions, more earlier on.
More questions for sure.
More time if you could.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to do it in 6 months?
Because I thought it would be similar to the MCAT exam.
Yeah.
So the MCAT is the medical school entrance exam in the US and the UK. And that exam covers like chemistry, physics, biology, psych, and a bunch of stuff. But anyway, the point is that that exam is very doable in 3 months.
Okay.
Like you can study for it, start to finish in 3 months, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Or 3 or 4 months. So I thought it would be kind of similar to that.
Okay.
But the USMLE was exponentially more content. Okay. Exponentially more difficult. And so why did I do it in 6 months? Because I underestimated how much I could do it.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I would have done it over a longer period of time for sure.
Okay. Interesting. And so how much medicine had you done by the time? Like how much medicine had you done in your first 3 years?
I had done first, second, and third year.
Okay.
So we'd cover all the body systems.
Okay.
So the biggest difference I found, like in the UK medical school system, you learn very superficially the pathology, and also you learn exactly what you need to know for clinical medicine. Okay. Which is perfectly fine. But for the step 1 exam, it's like nowhere near enough. Okay. There's so much underlying, like they'll ask you about histology, they'll ask you about the molecular pathways, they'll ask you about the receptors, like they will go so nitty gritty on every disease, every like process. So, which is useless in real life, but that's what they ask you on. So you kind of have to know it. Fine. My question to you is, why do you not wait until it's pass fail? So
the reason I want to do it in December 21 is that by that time, I'll have a pretty good gauge of what sort of score I'm getting. I think that if I back myself to absolutely smash it out of the park, then that will be better for me.
Yes.
And if I am finding that actually I'm only scraping a pass or I'm getting like an average score, I don't want that average score. I'll wait 2 months and make a pass fail.
Exactly.
That's my strategy.
So that's the thinking I had as well. If I'm at the point where I'm going to score well, I would rather have an actual score.
Yeah.
If I'm at the point where I'm failing or not doing as well as I would like, then I'll wait till pass fail. Yeah, exactly. But at some point I became too deep. Like when I was 4 months in, I had spent 4 months every single day, 8 to 10 hours.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this is it now. Like I'm gonna write it.
Okay.
And so that's when I buckled down. I moved it to 10 hours. I just went full steam ahead.
Okay, cool. That's good tips. More questions for me.
Hopefully they're useful.
More consistency and more discipline. Thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
We'll link to your video in the video description, and you guys check out Liberty Medics. Link in the video description if you want. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.